You're listening to episode 991 of the Father Bills podcast. Welcome back. Well, this week's episode is being offered by Deacon Brett Edmondson, our permanent deacon, and his homily is entitled, Your Identity in God, given on the 22nd Sunday in Ordinary Time, 2025.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Labor Day weekend to those of you who get to enjoy the holiday tomorrow. Those of you who are into history will recognize the name of Charlemagne. Charlemagne was the great 8th century French king who later became the first Holy Roman Emperor, and he was later looked to as kind of the model ruler for the Middle Ages. So he was kind of a big deal. There's a fun little story that's told about his funeral. So when Charlemagne died, a huge procession was put together to accompany his body from the castle to the cathedral. And when they arrived at the cathedral, lo and behold, they found the doors blocked by the bishop who was standing there waiting for him. And the bishop looked at them and he said to them, as was the custom, "Who comes?" And the emperor's herald responded, "Charlemagne, Lord and King of the Holy Roman Empire." "I know him not," replied the bishop. "Who comes?" Well, the herald was a little bit taken aback by this, so he paused for a second and then tried again. And he said, "Charles the Great, a good and honest man of the earth." "I know him not," said the bishop. "Who comes?" Well, now the herald was beginning to sweat a bit, wondering what this crazy clergyman was doing. But he paused and he thought for a moment, and then he said, "Charles, a lowly sinner who begs the gift of Christ." At which point the bishop smiled and stepped aside and said, "Enter, receive Christ's gift of life." Friends, it's been said that death makes paupers of us all, which is really true, isn't it? We don't take anything with us. It doesn't matter how much we've accomplished. It doesn't matter how much we've acquired. It doesn't matter how well we're known, how many likes we've gotten on our social media accounts. It doesn't matter how attractive we were. Our bodies, in the end, return to the earth, and we go before the judgment seat of God. You know, psychologists tell us that paradoxically, it's death itself that motivates so much of our striving in life. The idea being that all of us walk around dimly but inescapably aware of our mortality, of the fact that we will die, maybe today, but if not today, then one day for sure. Obviously, that's not a very comforting thought. So to distract ourselves, to deny the reality of death, if you will, we pour ourselves into achieving and acquiring and building a name for ourselves. We strive and we compete. We present a certain face to the world, all hoping that that will give us some sense of identity and meaning and purpose that will last. The psychologist Ernest Becker calls these efforts immortality projects. Immortality projects. Well, friends, in our gospel today, Jesus reminds us that all such projects, all our efforts to create our own identity, to invest our lives with meaning and purpose, all our attempts to find a place at the table that satisfies, if you will, all of those are doomed to end in frustration if God's not the one directing things. It's not that striving or competing or even building a reputation is bad, but in the end, God is the only one who really knows us and who understands our deepest, most heartfelt longings. And that's why we can trust him with our lives and even with our days. You know, it makes a difference. It makes a difference when we wake up in the morning and begin by offering all of our prayers, our works, our joys, our sufferings to God. When our focus isn't so much on, gosh, what am I going to do today? How am I going to succeed today? This situation, I'm really dreading this situation today. That's different than saying, Lord, how do you want me to serve today? Lord, use me today. Lord, who do you need me to be present to today? Lord, who should I be praying for today? That's a very different way of approaching our days. In the end, friends, there's only one you. In some of our cases, thanks be to God, right? But you are the only one who can take on the role that God has chosen for you. So the people that come into your life today, they're not there by accident. The situations in which you find yourself, they're not random. We can spend our energy, way too much energy, wishing things were different, or that we ourselves were different, or that our lives were more like this person's, or that we had that person's approval. And in the process, we miss the hand of God stretched out to us in our daily life, seeking to lead us where he wants us, and offering us his peace. Bishop Barron likes to say that we're all really good at taking over as the directors, the writers, and most especially as the stars of our own little quote-unquote ego dramas. The problem when we live like that is that when we live life with ourselves at the center and everyone else, including God, as the maybe supporting cast, we might say, it ends up being pretty boring and ultimately frustrating because our vision is too narrow and our aspirations too shallow. And we often don't know ourselves as well as we think we do. So what's the alternative? The alternative, Barron says, is to find the role that God has designed for you from all eternity, even if it looks like a bit part. Sometimes, he says in a story, the character who seems so minor emerges as the key to the whole narrative. Friends, when we decenter ourselves and recenter God, that's when life becomes exciting and unpredictable and full of purpose, because God himself is exciting and unpredictable and purposeful. And it's liberating to discover that. And a good reminder, too, that at the end of the day, when our time comes, the most important thing that can be said about us is, here was a child of God whom God loved. All our other identities are illusions.
Thank you again for listening to this episode of the Father Bills podcast, and a big thank you goes to Deacon Brett Edmondson, who offered the homily this last week. If you have any comments or questions, just go to my website, fatherbill.org. That's FRBILL.org. And there you can see what's going on my social media, my blog. I have a Friday video I put out, some other things as well. So I just encourage you to check it out. I've kind of been revamping the look of the website itself, and I think it's mostly done now. So I hope you enjoy it. In the meantime, may God bless you, and have a great week. Bye-bye.